So a quick warning out there for everybody who is invested in Tnxp stock. And I know this has been one of the most requested and also the most covered stocks on the channel. And now that we've gotten the news that TNX-102 SL has been approved, there's going to be a lot of volatility. Okay, so just first and foremost, there's going to be a lot of volatility going into this week. I can guarantee it. And if I'm wrong, if the stock is just flatlined and it doesn't move, then it probably means that the news is not that significant. But the news is significant because this is the first fibromyalgia drug in 15 years, okay? So I'm talking about the treatment that will potentially help out a lot of people. It'll revolutionize, the fibromyalgia market, which right now is roughly a $3 billion market, growing to 4 or 5 billion in the coming years, if not more. I've given estimates of 3 to 5 billion. To be honest, nobody really knows, even AI. I mean, you can estimate the market size, but there's a lot of factors that go into like exactly what you're estimating. But the market cap right now of Tnxp is 400 million. Okay, so just think of it this way. Tnxp already has 10% of the market valuation for fibromyalgia. Okay. Now, I was reading a piece, and I mentioned this in my last video, about how fibromyalgia is, the market is going to expand based upon the approval of Tnxp's drug. The one, I forget the exact name, it's Tanya or something like that, Tamnia, or is that how you pronounce it? Tamnia, I think it is the drug that Tnxp is using for their TNX-102 SL approval. That's their brand name that's coming out. Now, as this happens, like I said, they're going to start marketing and distributing this in the fourth quarter. But the news just came out. So what do you think is going to happen on Monday morning, tomorrow? Well, what's going to happen most likely is you're going to have a lot of excited traders. You're going to have a lot of excited people who may rush into the stock in the pre-market. Okay, keep that in mind because they're going to want to get in before everybody else. And then on top of that, not only do you have the pre-market, but you have the post-market and then in between, right? The actual market trading that is in between Tnxp stock. We'll have I would say the most volatility you're going to see is right when the market opens. And the reason I say that is because often what you'll see, especially after a big news event, like we saw on Friday morning, is you're going to have volatility in the pre-market to the point where I would guess, and I could be wrong, the price will start going up in the pre-market and people will start buying the stock in anticipation of a move in the regular market session. Then what's going to happen is when the market opens, you're going to see a lot of those gains initially erased in the pre-market because the market makers and other market participants and overall liquidity will increase in the market to the point where there's more of an equilibrium in the stock. And as such, the buyers won't overpower the sellers so much. So you could see a gap down as the market opens. Now, from there is anybody's guess. But I would say the pre and the post market, especially when the market opens, are going to be periods of high volatility. They're going to be periods of not only high volatility, but additionally volatility to the point where, you might be up 50% in the morning pre-market session and then down 20% by the end of the day. Okay. From the time the market opens to the time the market closes, there could be that much of a gap down in the stock, right? So keep that in mind. And then finally, this volatility is very short term. So, you have to ask yourself the question, and I always say this in every video, what is your risk tolerance? What is your investing goals? What are your long-term objectives? What are you trying to achieve? Because, this stuff in the short term doesn't really matter if you're focused on it from an investment perspective. Now, if you're just trying to make a quick buck and you want to get out of the stock and you end up over 500% or 1,000%, you better take the money and run. Because I've been through that myself. And I'm telling you right now that if you don't do those things, you are making a mistake. If you're focused on the short-term movements and you find yourself up big, take the money and run. There will be another opportunity. That's my advice, but I'm not your financial advisor. You have to make your own decisions, right? But nonetheless, this volatility we're going to see tomorrow is going to be short-lived and throughout the rest of the week. But a quick warning, right, against making irrational decisions, making decisions that are short-term when they're meant to be long-term, or making long-term decisions when they're meant to be short-term, right? Because emotions play a big part into this. And I've been through this myself, like I said, but when you're dealing with those emotions in real life, this is not paper trading. This is real money. And, these are real funds floating around in your bank account, potentially. And you have to be mindful of both fear and greed. The ability to control those emotions is paramount. And so many people forget when they're in the moment to think rationally, to take a step back. Yes, the stock might be moving quick. Yes, you might want to make a quick decision. You got to take a deep breath though. Take a deep breath. Think about what will happen if you make this decision versus what the consequences could be potentially if you end up making this decision, right? So and ultimately you need to have a plan. You can't just wing this, There's going to be a lot of volatility in the short term and in the long term potentially, but mostly in the short term. So you can't just wing this. You can't just go into this and say, well, we'll see what happens. Maybe I end up 300%. Maybe the stock goes parabolic. Maybe I make this much. You need to have a plan. And if that plan is to come up, tonight, if you need to come up with that plan tonight because you're concerned about the volatility that's going to be happening, then you need to make that plan ASAP, like right now, as you're watching this video. So, that way you don't get caught off guard. And that way, if something does happen unexpected, which is likely because this is the stock market, right? Unexpected stuff happens all the time. The market is unpredictable. You at least will have some kind of a plan, some kind of a benchmark to fall back on. And you'll have something to think about in terms of the decisions you're making and in terms of, should this decision be one that I actually end up making or should I hold off, right? There's so many things to consider. And like I said, it all goes back to what your risk tolerance and investing goals are. But if you find yourself up 500% all of a sudden, 1,000%, and you decided long ago when you bought this stock that you were just going to do this until till the stock goes parabolic, well, now the stock's gone parabolic, right? So don't shoot for 2,000%. Take your money and run, okay? There's going to be something else. But if you're focused on, the long-term trajectory, I think this stock does have potential. This stock really does. And so either way, right, there's so many things to consider, but it's not an easy decision a lot of the times. Emotions are involved. And so just remember that and try to come up with a plan that suits your risk tolerance, your investing goals, your objectives, and all that good stuff. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for tuning into this video, this evening video as we approach tomorrow morning. Have a plan. This is a warning to you guys who don't have a plan, who don't have any kind of, I don't even know what the word is I'm looking for, but you need to have a plan. This is a warning for those of you guys who don't have one and are just winging it. Think about what your plan is and try to execute on that plan as tomorrow approaches in this week, because it's going to get volatile. There's going to be a lot of emotions involved, and you need to be ready, especially if you have a significant portion in this stock or you've been invested in this stock a long time, okay? So with that being said, thank you all for tuning into this video. Hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday evening, and I'm excited myself to see what happens tomorrow. I'll be watching the price action, and with that being said, thank you so much. We will see you all in the next video. Take care.